Hello, welcome back. Well, today we are talking down there healthcare and putting UTIs, urinary tract infections, under the spotlight with a look at why they become so common during our perimenopausal and menopausal years. Now, UTIs are something in particular that I struggled with for many years. And no, I'm not ashamed to say it. I've talked about it many times here on this channel. In fact, 50% of women will have at least one UTI in their lifetime, with data from the NHS indicating that UTIs have led to more than a staggering 800,000 hospital admissions in England alone over the past 5 years. Hospital admissions. And you know, I'm not being dramatic here, but UTIs literally can cause women to die if left untreated. It can lead to sepsis. Now, this actually happened to a friend of mine not that long ago. Perimenopausal, untreated UTI. Bacteria travelled back up into the bladder, on up into the kidneys, led to sepsis, and to her being rushed to A&E, where she received emergency and, thankfully, life-saving care. So yes, UTIs can kill. Be aware. On a lesser level, they're incredibly common, yet many of us do still feel embarrassed to talk about the topic, and we definitely don't need to feel that way. So why do UTIs happen in the first place? And more importantly, what can we do about them? Well, for me, UTIs, and recurrent ones at that, became a real issue for me during my perimenopausal years. And at the time, I'd go to the doctor and they'd be prescribing me endless rounds of antibiotics, increasingly strong, like nuclear strength, and they never actually resolved the issue. Looking back now, with what I now know, I think this was all tied to me for the birth of my last child when I was 47 and subsequent breastfeeding, and I will come back to this in a moment because it's a really important point that is often not talked about, and you or your daughters or your younger friends might not know about, but you need to know about the link with UTIs and breastfeeding, or even just postpartum generally. Well, to be honest, things really only started to change for me when I was writing my book, The Good Menopause Guide. And I got in touch with the menopause specialist, Dr. Louise Newson. Yeah, you might have heard of her. Well, I went on to HRT, thanks to her, estrogen and progesterone, and started using vaginal estrogen alongside my estrogel. Yep, you can use both together. And sometimes we need to use both to get control of things like UTIs. And then things really started to change for me. But goodness me, I mean, we shouldn't have to go to such lengths to get treatment. Our GPs should know about this, or health visitors or midwives, for something that affects just so many of us. And on a recent podcast, I chatted to brilliant American medic, Dr. Rachel Rubin. She's a urologist and a sexual medicine specialist. Such a good listen. Really, seriously go and listen. I will put a link below. But you know, she pointed out that even the likes of Halle Berry, the A-list movie megastar, has struggled to get the right treatment during menopause. Yeah, even an A-lister. I mean, frankly, if a Hollywood star with all their resources struggles, what hope do the rest of us have? Honestly, if I had known then what I now know to be true, I really do think it would be a completely different story. So much time and heartache and pain would have just disappeared. And I dread to think, to be honest, what would have happened if I hadn't been fixed. And that's why I think it's just so important for women everywhere. So, okay, let's get into it. Let's first of all take a look at what a UTI is. So UTI, it just means urinary tract infection. And this basically means an infection anywhere in your urinary system. Could be cystitis, for example. So symptoms can include a burning sensation when we wee, and a sudden or increased need to go to the loo to have a wee. Women are up to 30 times more likely than men to have a UTI. And this is basic biology. It's because we have a shorter urethra, and that's the tube that carries urine out of the body. Because, well, I mean, it's so much shorter than a man's urethra that runs the length of the penis. So bacteria are much more likely to reach our bladder and cause all sorts of trouble. But UTIs become even more common during our perimenopausal and menopausal years. And there are a number of really simple reasons for this. So one of the big factors, yeah, you might have guessed it, is due to our fluctuating hormones. Surprise, surprise, yes. the gift that keeps on giving. So lowering levels of estrogen, progesterone and testosterone, that female hormone testosterone, really do have a big impact on our pelvic area. And this is because our urinary tract is lined with cells that have receptors for these hormones, all three of them, helping to keep the tissues in this particular area strong and supple. So when these levels of hormones drop or fluctuate, the tissues in our urinary tract can become very much thinner, reducing the body's ability to ward off infection. So using this logic, first of all, we need to think about replacing our declining hormones with HRT and using vaginal estrogen applied directly on the affected area. And it's a very effective and super safe solution for treating UTIs, along with other issues such as vaginal dryness and vaginal atrophy. So Vagifem, this little pessary here, is often a go-to here. It's placed directly in the vagina, not the whole thing, just a little pellet on the end, and it helps to replenish lowering levels of estrogen. Another alternative and a non-estrogen treatment is called Intrarosa. This is very effective. It's a vaginal pessary for treating UTIs, and it contains a hormone called DHEA. Now, our body naturally produces DHEA anyway, and once Intrarosa is inserted, the body converts the DHEA into both estrogen and testosterone. Plus, it's combined with plant oils, which once dissolved inside, help to lubricate the tissues in the pelvic area. Now, it really is so incredibly helpful for UTIs, but what truly makes my blood boil about this one is how difficult it is to get hold of. So Dr. Louise Newson recently shared a map of the UK on her Instagram, which details where Intrarosa is available. It's pretty much impossible to find it in Wales or Scotland. Can't get your hands on it. And in many counties across England, they just don't have access, including mine. My local GP can't prescribe this for me. So accessibility was a little better in Northern Ireland, but it yet once again shows what a complete postcode lottery women's health truly is. It's enraging. And even if you do get a prescription from your GP, there's no guarantee that the pharmacies in your local area will be able to source it either. I mean, really, come on. It's not even expensive. It's cheap for the NHS. Anyway, let's press pause on that rant for now, but you can be sure that is not the last you'll hear me talk of it. Okay, I promise. Coming back to this one. Now, we are, of course, mainly talking here about perimenopause and menopause in terms of UTIs, but I do also want to mention new mums. I said that a little bit earlier, particularly those who are breastfeeding, because they are much more at risk of UTIs too. And again, this ties into estrogen. Now, as many of you will know, my lovely Lily recently gave birth to her baby, my first grandchild. And this has been something that we have been discussing because she's been struggling, and she was told about Vagifem from a friend of hers who's a women's physio. So when women are breastfeeding, we are producing less estrogen, and that in turn can cause some of the changes that mimic those that we see later in menopause. For example, a change in the lining of the vagina, pH changes, and an overgrowth of the unfriendly bad bacteria. So breastfeeding mums can also get a prescription for vaginal estrogen. It's super safe. Even if you're breastfeeding, it stays localized within the vagina, and it's a very effective treatment for UTIs. And again, I think it's one of those things where this information often just isn't passed on to new mums. I never heard about it. I've had 5 children, okay? We get lots of advice about breastfeeding and checking baby's okay, of course, all very important. But what about poor mum? Especially when she's struggling. You know, it's difficult enough caring for a newborn without having to run to the loo every 10 minutes and dealing with a UTI and vaginal dryness and upset. So know that you are well within your rights to get vaginal estrogen. So Balance, that is the menopause app by Newson Health, has some really helpful resources on this specifically, and I will be sure to share in the link below. Sure to share. There you go. I'll pop it in the link below. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, aside from our hormones, it's really important to pay careful attention to our vaginal microbiome. So that's the good, friendly bacteria that lives down there. And interestingly, estrogen has also been linked to our vaginal microbiome. And I had a really fascinating chat about all of this on my podcast recently. That's the Earle Wellbeing Show podcast with the microbiologist, Dr. Kate Stevens. And again, I will pop a link below for you to take a listen. The bottom line of this is that experts believe that when our estrogen declines, it reduces the food source for the friendly bacteria in our vaginal microbiome. So they diminish, and reducing the amount of friendly bacteria gives those harmful bugs an opportunity to take over, to proliferate, and then UTIs are much more likely to become more of a problem. So we do need to think about building up our microbiome defences, having a whole array of friendly bacteria that can help to look after us there. And in that particular podcast, Dr. Kate Stevens outlines some of the specific strains of bacteria that have been proven, clinically proven, to be hugely beneficial for our vaginal microbiome. And one key species here is Lactobacillus. And Kate described these as the guardians of our vaginal microbiome because these bacteria really should dominate as they help to protect and defend us against any of those nasty pathogens. So again, when it comes to prioritising a probiotic, Lactobacillus should really be top of the list. Okay, other things that we can do to keep our friendly bacteria happy, especially if you're battling a UTI, is to limit the amount of sugar that we're eating. Bad bacteria absolutely love sugar. They thrive on it. And so the worst thing that we can do is to scoff a sugary donut or a bag of sweets, even if we feel like comfort eating. You know, our good bacteria love fibre. So focus on eating nutrient-rich whole foods and try and keep sugar to a minimum. And actually, just while I'm thinking about this and what we eat and drink, another thing that you might want to avoid with a UTI is caffeine. Yeah, so coffee, tea, maybe even chocolate, cola drinks. Caffeine can irritate the bladder and creates a stronger urge to go. So it's well worth avoiding just for a bit to give your bladder a rest if you have a UTI. So other ingredients that are a bit more helpful and well worth a look, things like pumpkin seeds. This is the Jude supplement, really like this. Research has shown that pumpkin seeds can help to improve overactive bladder symptoms and can also help to reduce the frequency and the needing to get up in the night to go. So that's a great win. And why is this important when it comes to UTIs? Well, if we are constantly battling recurrent UTIs, it can leave our pelvic muscles fatigued and more prone to leakage. And pumpkin seeds, full of nitric oxide, can help to improve pelvic floor strength. Plus, they also have anti-inflammatory properties that can help to flush out the toxins. So another helpful herb that I really want to highlight is Uva ursi. You heard of this one? This is a really interesting one when it comes to treating UTIs and for bladder health in general. Traditionally used for bladder health, it's been shown to have antimicrobial compounds, so it may play a role in killing certain microbes associated with UTIs, and it's been shown in test tube studies to have mild antimicrobial activity against the UTI causing pathogens, including E. coli. Now, the data is limited on using Uva ursi as an effective treatment in UTIs. It seems to be that it may be helpful if used at the first sign of infection. In one study, it didn't make much difference to patients. However, in another randomized research paper of 57 women, those who took Uva ursi with dandelion root, another really good cleansing herb, did experience a reduction in UTI infections compared to those taking out a placebo. So let's not rule it out entirely. And I do know women, friends of mine, who swear by Uva ursi. And could we really get through this chat without mentioning cranberry juice? There's an old wives' tale of drinking cranberry juice to combat a UTI, and admittedly, there is some evidence to support this, and there's research to suggest that cranberry juice can help stop pathogens binding to the lining of the urinary tract in the first place. They just can't grip on. And one of the key components found in cranberry juice is a molecule called D-mannose. Got some here, you can buy it separately. This is a really interesting thing. It's actually a simple sugar, usually from birch trees, or cranberries. And along with cranberries, you can also find it in things like apples, oranges, and peaches. But if you want a decent dose, you're going to have to buy it separately. You can supplement with D-mannose. It's very safe. It's very effective. I've had a pot of this in my cupboard for years. Now, it's thought that D-mannose works to block certain bacteria, again, from growing in the urinary tract by stopping these bacteria from latching on in the first place. Again, there aren't a huge number of studies, but the ones that have researched D-mannose for treating UTIs have been positive. There was a 2013 study, for instance, that found that D-mannose worked pretty much as well as the antibiotic nitrofluoretoin for preventing UTIs. Hope I've said that correctly. Another 2014 study found that D-mannose reduced UTI symptoms in women with an active infection and was more effective than an antibiotic for preventing additional infections. Food for thought, especially as it's not going to disrupt your microbiome. Finally, a word on intimate washes. Obviously, with UTIs, keep the area as clean as possible, but are intimate washes a solution? Well, if you ask me, the answer actually is a firm no. Lots of these are scented and they're marketed at us, women, to help us have a sweet-smelling vagina. I mean, these could actually be making things far worse for us. We do want things to be slightly acidic down there. And when the pH is lower, it helps to kill off harmful bacteria. But some of these intimate washes, and again, check the label, can actually raise the pH of the vagina, creating an environment that things like E. coli can thrive in. So no thank you. If you want to go there, get a pH balanced one that's properly made. Don't use it inside, just around and about the outside. I hope this was helpful as ever. Lots to chat about. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Are UTIs something that you've struggled with? Do you have any questions that you would like answering that I have not covered here? Don't forget, especially with this one, please share with your girlfriends. This is something the sisterhood really needs to know about. We often don't talk about it, but you can send it to somebody with a little note saying, just in case it might be of interest, and who knows, could even be a lifesaver. I'll see you next time.